The adolescent years are a period of growth and change that challenge our children and ourselves. They can be the best of times and the worst of times. They are what we make of them and what we expect of them. Hello, I'm Michael Learned for Aid Association for Lutherans. It's my pleasure to be here today to look at the years of your child's life between 11 and 15. The years of early adolescence when your child begins taking major steps toward independence and adulthood. We'll see that though the early adolescent years sometimes bring with them their share of stress and conflict, they're exciting years of rapid change and growth when you can watch your child become more mature and more like an adult. We'll see, too, that one of the period's greatest challenges is to face and respond to our changing roles as parents, as our children change physically, emotionally, and socially. The developmental changes of adolescence begin with puberty, a time when children become more physically like adults.
One of the most important parts of the transition from childhood into adolescence involves the biological changes that we call puberty. And puberty involves both internal changes for the child, changes in hormones, but also changes in the child's appearance. The parent will notice changes in the child's height and weight. There's what we call the adolescent growth spurt, in which the child will grow about 12 inches in a period of maybe a year and a half. And the parent will also notice changes in the child's secondary sex characteristics. In young girls, for example, changes in her breasts, changes in hips, in both sexes, changes in body hair. In boys, the growth of facial hair, the deepening of the voice, and of course in girls, menarche, which is the term we use to refer to the first period.
The rapid physical changes of puberty can affect children in many ways. Hormonal changes can sometimes cause moodiness. Rapid and uneven growth spurts may create physical awkwardness, and many early adolescents become extremely sensitive about how they look.
One of the really interesting parts of puberty is that it's not very strongly tied to kids' age, their chronological age. And there's quite a large span in terms of when kids begin to go through puberty and how long it takes them. For some girls, it may begin as early as age 9. For others, it might not begin until 13. For some boys, it may begin as early as age 10. For others, it might not begin until 14 or 15. So some kids are going to be what we call early maturers, and others are late maturers, and others are somewhere in between.
Puberty can take anywhere from 18 months to 6 years, and it can be a difficult time. Children may become extremely sensitive about their physical appearance, in part because they're changing so fast and want to know where it's all going to end, but also because they're comparing themselves and their development to others.
Junk. Bills. Hi, kid. What's up?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
Kid, what is it?
Mom. It's just me.
What about you?
It's just me.
You want to tell me what's got you so upset?
It's just that it's all the time. Jeannie and her friends teasing me. We were in the locker room after gym, and she goes, "Oh, look at Madonna." I thought Jeannie was my friend.
I think it's important for parents to be sensitive to the fact that their adolescent is going through this comparative process and is wondering, am I normal physically? What am I going to look like when all of these changes are done with? why don't I look like my classmates right now? How is it all going to turn out in the end? And I think the key for parents is to speak openly and honestly with their children about what puberty is and what's going to happen to them, both before their child starts puberty and as their child is going through it.
Besides physical changes, adolescents are experiencing significant changes in the way they think. Where they used to think primarily in concrete terms of things they could touch and see, they can now think more abstractly. This means they can think about ideas, consider various possibilities and hypothetical situations, and contemplate what an ideal world might be like. These new capabilities can take some getting used to by adolescents and parents.
Like somebody with a new toy, adolescents want to practice their new ability to examine the many sides of an issue. This can cause them to appear more argumentative, but it also results in more adult-like thinking and reasoning. Parents can help their adolescents stretch their new reasoning ability by encouraging and taking part in discussions about principles and values. They should try, however, to avoid personality issues and to remain non-judgmental so that these discussions don't turn into fights. Also, as adolescents leave childhood behind, they often become extremely self-conscious since they can now consider what others may be thinking. They often, quite normally, create what's called an imaginary audience, an observer who is as absorbed in them as they are. A boy may notice his parents whispering, and he's sure that they're talking about him. A girl passes a group of boys and just knows that they're laughing at her. Parents can help during this period mainly by not trivializing their adolescents' concerns and by providing realistic feedback, reassurance, and support.
The adolescent's new ability to consider the ideal often makes him or her likely to be critical of their parents, to see feet of clay where they once saw Superman and Supermom.
We often joke and say that now, instead of having the parent up on a pedestal, the adolescent wants the parent under the pedestal. And it's very, very common in households for children to try to focus in on their parents' flaws and on the lapses in their parents' judgment, and to point out inconsistencies or hypocrisies in what their parents say.
Being a dad gives you unlimited dad power, huh? Thank you for making up my mind.
A lot of parents get very, very upset and annoyed by this. Some parents can shrug it off and laugh at it and understand, again, that it's not something that they should take personally, but it's something that they should understand as a normal part of growing up and learning to think for yourself.
I just don't know what's going on with Jeffrey. I mean, he's always been respectful and usually obedient. But now he challenges practically everything I say. And his tone is very fresh.
There can be several reasons for this common concern, but it often stems from the adolescent's new ability to think in more sophisticated ways.
Adolescents are discovering that they have this great new ability to form their own opinions and worldview, and to question things that they've always taken for granted. This can lead them to challenging their parents' ideas and authority with a frankness that parents often perceive as disrespectful. Most of the time, though, that's not really what the adolescent intended. This kind of challenging can really become a problem, though, if parents continue to use the same discipline and rule-setting strategies that they used when the adolescent was younger. As children enter adolescence, control based on physical strength and size just doesn't work. Neither does saying, "Do it because I'm the parent and I said so." Adolescents, with their increased ability to think more abstractly, can effectively point out weaknesses in the parent's argument or logic, as well as the fact that other families just may do things differently.
The changes in the way your adolescent thinks and the physical changes of puberty produce even more far-reaching emotional and social developments. Perhaps none of these developments give parents more cause for concern than the increased importance and changing nature of peer relationships.
One of the major social changes that occurs in adolescence is children's movement from just dyadic relationships, that is, a best friend relationship, into a relationship with a larger set of peers. In adolescence, a major challenge for many young people is to fit into a crowd, to become part of a group. So much so that parents are going to be noticing a new emphasis upon behaviors that help me fit in. It may no longer be cool to wear a particular kind of shoe. It may no longer be cool to wear a bike helmet. And it becomes a huge issue.
Denny, you must always wear your helmet. Now, I've told you time and time again.
We have a huge
you
fight
have to wear-
over something as simple as this. Why? Because wearing a bike helmet may make me unacceptable to the peer group to which I really want to belong. And because that peer group is so much a sense of who I am, I'm not willing to take the risk, even if it means making my parent angry.
But Dad, you just don't understand. Nobody wears a helmet to school. You want everybody to think I'm a nerd?
I think we forget when we get into adulthood just how important it is to feel accepted and to feel understood and to feel known, to have a reputation among our peers. The worst thing that I can do right now is to stand out from the crowd. My body's changing, all these things around me are changing. I don't know exactly how to behave or what to do or whether or not I'm going to be accepted. Just for a time, I want the comfort and security of the crowd. Just for a time. When I feel comfortable enough, I'll venture out on my own. We need to be patient and allow the child to do that.
We may sometimes feel uncomfortable with the group our child associates with and criticize the group without considering the effect that criticism may have.
Dan, look. David's out there now with those delinquents. That one. Huh, I think he's got an earring.
That doesn't exactly make him a criminal, dear. Some of my favorite people wear earrings.
Yes, one on their noses.
Times have changed, I guess.
Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. What's for dinner?
Dinner can wait. I want to talk to you about those. They had Peck out there. Must you ride home with them every day?
Mom, they're good guys. Jerko won the regional skateboard competition 2 years in a row. And
Wow! A skateboard championship. I'm so impressed.
Mom, you don't even know anything about them. They're really okay. I think I could probably skate with them by the end of the year.
Oh, no. You're not going to skate with them.
Many times, parents don't recognize just how important in the lives of young people belonging to a peer group really is. And so they put it down, particularly if they don't like the group or are pretty uncomfortable with the group. What we fail to remember is that to the child, for a period of time, there may not be a whole heck of a lot of difference between that group and myself. I derive my sense of identity from that group. So when you put down my group, you put down me. One mistake that is tempting to make is to prohibit the child from associating with that group of people. Oftentimes what will happen is the child will continue to associate with them, but they will no longer tell us as parents about it, and we will have lost communication. The more effective mechanisms are the more indirect pathways. To try to set up subtle roadblocks to those associations, make it a little bit more difficult for an adolescent to have the family car or to get transportation to a particular event. Another thing that I think parents can do is to become familiar with the adolescent's friends. Because we have to recognize that many times adolescents are in a particular crowd because that's where they seem to belong.
These kids aren't so bad.
By being comfortable getting to know the friends as individuals, we may have a sense of why the adolescent is attracted to that crowd and in a better position to talk with our adolescent about how to move on to something better. The final thing that parents can do, again, is simply to encourage a wide variety of interests so that adolescents may naturally move into several crowds or a different crowd that we may feel more comfortable with.
Besides their occupation with the peer group, adolescents are often absorbed in a search for personal identity. The adolescent years are a time to experiment with different identities, to try them on and see how they fit.
Who am I anyway? Do I have a look? What kind of person will fill the empty pages of my book? Could I be a leader, powerful and proud, or just another number, faceless in the crowd? Maybe I'm a rebel, a wild and fearless girl. Could I be an activist set out to change the world? Am I sexy? Am I brainy? Who's this girl I'm dreaming of? For all I know, I'm all or none of the above.
Putting all the pieces together is what the search for identity is all about. Adolescents need to feel they're unique and special, yet also that they fit in, that they belong. Though we can't hand our children ready-made identities, there are ways we can help them explore various identities and develop a healthy sense of self.
Developing an identity takes a great deal of personal exploration and trial and error. Adolescents might try out a variety of different interests, peer groups, personalities, religious beliefs, and romantic relationships. They may be passionate about a particular interest one week and then forget about it completely the next. They do a lot of daydreaming and fantasizing as they imagine what their future might be and who they might become. And though they may go through as many temporary identities as they do sneakers, there are some things that we can do to help them develop a healthy identity. First, accept them as a separate person and give them the space to experiment and explore. Encourage them to try new things, like trying out for a sport or joining a club at school. Second, try to be patient and exercise restraint as you watch your adolescent try on these various identities. If he comes home one day and announces he's going to be a rock star instead of an engineer, try to live with that for a while. Chances are good that with time and an opportunity to fully explore his new decision, he may come around to a more realistic goal. But also remember that though we all have hopes and dreams for our children, it's very important that we don't impose them too strongly on our adolescents. Most teens, after a period of exploration, usually return to the values and aspirations held by their parents. On the other hand, keep in mind that maybe your son has the talent to be a great rock star, and that's really the dream that he should pursue. Finally, talk and work with your adolescent to help them think through the consequences of their current interests and goals. Sometimes they haven't fully thought through the implications of various vocational choices or political positions. You can point out and encourage their strengths and abilities. Young teens are often quite unaware of their talents and may really appreciate hearing your assessment. That is, if it's done in a positive and encouraging way.
The conflicts of adolescence are usually waged on the home front.
But Mom, everybody's going.
Dad, you just don't understand.
What do you think? I'm still a baby?
Mom, get real. He's had his license for over 2 months.
10:30.
The battle cries you just heard are your children's declarations of independence. If there's one struggle that colors the adolescent years, it is the struggle for independence. Though our adolescents aren't ready to move out and set up housekeeping yet, they are deeply engrossed in the process of becoming independent people. Adolescents need and want greater freedom from parents. Gaining it is a necessary step if they are ever to become responsible and mature adults. Negotiating it, however, can be a major source of tension and conflict between adolescents and parents.
In lots of families, independence is the battleground of adolescence. It's what the tension between parents and children is all about. We know that families are more likely to bicker and squabble about mundane, everyday issues during this time period from around 11 to 13 than they are before or after. And most of the squabbles that parents and teenagers have really are about independence in some ways. And there's a kind of inevitable clash going on here that parents need to be aware of.
Samantha, are you in there?
Yes, Mom.
What are you doing?
Nothing, Mom.
Samantha, this door is locked. Open it immediately. There's no reason.
One thing that parents often comment on is that their children often demonstrate a need for more privacy.
Samantha, I know you hear
And this is when kids will be in their bedrooms with the doors closed all the time, and parents will be wondering if this is a sign that they're doing something bad in there, or if they're keeping something or hiding something from them. Typically, they're not. But kids often do express a need for more privacy, for more aloneness, and it has to do with this drive toward becoming a more independent, self-contained person.
A second behavior that parents often see, and one that frequently annoys them, is that children don't like to be seen with their parents in public in a way that makes the teen look like a child. So often we see parents and kids, let's say, at church, and the child won't want to sit next to the parents, but might prefer to sit a little bit farther away with their friends. In addition, adolescents may not want you to demonstrate affection in public, but they usually appreciate it in private. Kids need their parents during this time more than ever. They need to know that their parents love them, that they stand by them, that they're there for them, especially when times get tough.
And the times do get tough for all families once in a while. Some level of conflict during the adolescent years is inevitable. There are, however, strategies we can use to minimize and reduce it. Many of these have to do with the way we set rules and limits and grant independence.
Kids who are the same age may be very different from each other in terms of their levels of emotional maturity, in terms of their levels of responsibility. So one thing is, when you're making guidelines for your child, is to try to take into account your child as an individual. Has my child been responsible in the past? When I've had expectations for my child, has she come through? Or has this been the kind of child that I've really had to keep tighter control over?
Let's look at some techniques that can help you grant your child greater independence safely and with a minimum level of conflict.
As a general rule of thumb, it makes sense to loosen the reins of parental control bit by bit as your child moves into and through adolescence. So we don't want to clamp down, certainly. We don't want to loosen them all at once and have no rules at all. We want to try to do it gradually as your child gets older and is more capable of responsibility. Give your child increasingly more responsibilities and increasingly more opportunities to make decisions at home.
Now, we're just gonna be down the block at the cruises, all right?
Yeah, you told me, Mom.
Do you have the phone number?
We know the number, Dad. All right, be careful.
This will give your child kind of practice in being an independent person. And if your child demonstrates that he can handle those responsibilities or that she can make good decisions, then you might, in response to that, increase the amount of independence that your child is granted.
Help your child learn and practice decision-making skills.
One thing that is important for parents to do is just to nurture the child's decision-making capacities. To, in early adolescence or prior to adolescence, give the child some practice in making some decisions and seeing consequences of those decisions, so that they are wise risk takers, recognizing when things are too risky or not positive risks. The other thing that parents can do is to simply acknowledge that risk-taking is part of adolescence, and it's okay for adolescents to take some risks, so long as they are positive risks. Many parents clamp down so hard on adolescents and have such a strict set of guidelines that adolescents have no choice but either to take no risks, and that sets them up for some real negative experiences later in life, or to take great risks to rebel against parents.
Another effective strategy is to pick your battles carefully.
Big problems arise in families where parents view every single conflict with their child as an opportunity to assert their authority as parents. It's a kind of domino theory of parenting that we know just isn't right. But many parents nevertheless believe, well, if I give in on how big her earrings are, she's going to be smoking marijuana tomorrow. And so I better fight with her about what earrings she wears to prevent more damage from happening down the road. That isn't the way it works in families. What's better in families is to give your child some room to make some decisions on things that don't really matter all that much, but to stand firm on the things that are really important.
One very important strategy for minimizing conflict and setting fair and appropriate rules is the use of negotiable and non-negotiable rules.
Non-negotiable rules are rules that deal with physical and emotional safety and strongly held family values. These rules are the givens that are not easily changed. In contrast, negotiable rules are more flexible and more open to change. Negotiable rules deal with behaviors and tasks that parents expect, such as curfew, household responsibilities, and dress. Parents and adolescents can mutually determine the specific level of performance and the timing of negotiable rules. When you're setting non-negotiable rules, there are certain principles to keep in mind. Non-negotiable rules should address the safety and well-being of the adolescent, deeply held family values, and existing laws. For example, no using alcohol or other drugs, or in our family, we don't believe teenagers should be sexually active. Non-negotiable rules may also reinforce existing laws. For example, no driving any car until you get your license. Also, non-negotiable rules are most effective when they are kept to just a few important ones. So parents should try to be selective in which rules are considered non-negotiable. Adolescents may challenge even non-negotiable rules, but they usually will respect parental firmness if the few non-negotiable areas are important, selected with care, and are clearly stated and explained. Non-negotiable rules aren't subject to day-to-day reevaluation, but some will become negotiable as adolescents mature. For example, you cannot drive the car may be a non-negotiable before your adolescent has a driver's license, but will likely become a negotiable rule once he or she passes the test. While it's important to have a few select non-negotiable rules, most should be negotiable. Rules that deal with when homework gets done, curfew, how clean their room should be, and where your child may go are all rules that fall into this category. These too should be set with certain principles in mind. For example, negotiable rules should be made by parents and adolescents together, taking into account the needs of both. The more you involve your adolescent in the process of coming up with these rules and negotiating them, the more compliance you're going to get from your child. Kids don't mind obeying rules when they feel that they've had some hand in making them. What they do mind is obeying authority when it's imposed on them in a way that they think has been illegitimate or unreasonable. Parents should explain why they think a rule is needed and be willing to listen to their adolescent's opinion. Specific details of the rule and the consequences of breaking it should be negotiated based on input from both parents and adolescents. Most importantly, negotiable rules should be reevaluated from time to time as adolescents mature and demonstrate their responsibility. Otherwise, parents may find themselves trying to enforce rules that are inappropriate for their child's level of maturity.
Linda, I'm only going to say this once. The answer is no. You're only 12, and that's too young to go out with a boy on a date. Linda, I'm only going to say this once. The answer is no. You're only 14, and that's too young to go out with a boy on a date. Linda, I'm only going to say this once. The answer is no. You're too young to go out with a boy on a date.
Dad, I want to introduce you to my fiancé, Biff. Dad, this is Biff. Biff? My dad?
Communication between parents and adolescents is often problematic. If communication is blocked or one-way or non-existent, it can cause conflict and stress. Effective communication, however, can be the key to successful relationships. Let's look at some of the challenges that parents and adolescents encounter when it comes to communication.
I don't know. I guess it's like, well, my parents talk, but they don't seem to talk to me. They talk at me.
Well, it's not like we have talk show type problems. We get along pretty well. But my son just never talks to me.
Parents complain their children don't talk to them enough, and adolescents complain that though their parents may talk a lot, they don't communicate. What's going on here?
There are a couple things that parents can do if they have a child who doesn't seem to be talking openly and honestly. One thing is to engage in fun activities with your child. You can't simply walk into your child's bedroom and say,
Sally, you haven't been talking. Is there something on your mind? Let's talk about it.
Most adolescents don't react very well to that. Instead, if you and Sally go to a baseball game, or go shopping, or go out for lunch, and have a fun time together, she may begin opening up more.
Use good times together, casual conversation and items in the news and on TV as door openers to conversation and communication that can bring you and your adolescent closer together. If you still find your adolescent isn't ready or willing to talk, be patient and be sure that they know you're willing to listen when they're ready to talk.
But I want you to know that I am here when you do want to talk to me about it. And if you feel like you want to talk to somebody else, I'll help you find somebody to talk to when you're ready.
Okay, Mom.
Okay. Now, good night.
Good night.
When adolescents complain about a lack of communication from their parents, they may be referring to any number of communication roadblocks that some parents put up without even knowing it. Let's look in on the Lindley family to see what kind of roadblocks may be hindering their family communication.
Morning, Dad.
Well, here he is. Finally. Good morning, Sleeping Beauty. So nice of you to get your lazy bones up and out of bed.
Well, that didn't take long. Adolescents often take teasing and criticism quite personally. It may not always seem like it, but they put a lot of stock in what you say. Try to avoid teasing, criticizing, and ridicule.
I guess you're, wondering why I was so late last night. Actually, it's kind of funny.
Now, just hold it right there, young man. There's nothing funny about breaking your word or about being late. Punctuality is a sign of respect and intelligence. Now, we had an agreement that you would be in by 9, and you broke that agreement. How long do you think I would keep my job if I showed up late for work and then told my boss how funny it was?
Lectures and moral sermons are by definition one-way communication messages. If you want to encourage communication between you and your adolescent, avoid lecturing and moralizing.
I guess you're right. Running out of gas isn't so funny.
You ran out of gas?
I didn't run out of gas.
Well, let me give you some advice here, Lonnie. Always check the gas gauge. You put your seatbelt on, you turn the key, you check the gas gauge. Now, who's ever driving from now on, I want you to make it a point to ask how much fuel they have.
Giving too much advice and too many orders isn't a good way to encourage communication. You can be a valuable resource for your adolescent without being Ann Landers and General Schwarzkopf all rolled into one.
Thanks, Mom. Oh, Mom, I meant to ask you, can I go over to Matt's after school? He's got a new video game.
You are driving me crazy. I told you last night that your room has to be completely cleaned up before you're going anywhere. Oh, you make me so angry. You have no respect for the fact that I try and keep this house clean. You think I'm the hired help around here.
Lori just demonstrated another common communication roadblock, the you message. A you message may sound like a valid statement of fact, but its real purpose is to vent anger and assign blame. You messages put people down and tend to make them defensive, not the kind of approach that will encourage open communications. Roadblocks like these tend to cause adolescents to clam up or to give up on trying to communicate with you. Every time a communication roadblock prevents communication, it represents a lost opportunity, a missed chance to share with your child the things that are important to them and to you. Besides avoiding these and other roadblocks that can hinder communication, there are other techniques we can use to improve communication with our adolescents.
Well, I know my parents think I got like this big problem or something, but I don't. I just don't have anything to say. And even if I did, they wouldn't hear me. They're like there, but they don't really listen. Not really.
Most of the listening people do is very passive. We sit back and we listen to the TV or the radio. When we want to know what our adolescents are really saying and feeling, though, we have to be much more active. Listening in this way is called active listening. It involves concentrating, establishing eye contact, and using body language that lets the speaker know that you're listening and accepting what the speaker has to say without judging them. Also, with active listening, remaining silent can sometimes be as effective as responding. Another important technique of active listening is to reflect back what the speaker is saying and what you hear that they are feeling. Listening in this way is like holding up a mirror in which the adolescent can see his or her feelings with greater clarity. In other words, active listening means providing sensitive feedback.
No matter how successful we are at getting our adolescents to open up to us, it won't really improve communications unless we really hear and actively understand what they have to say. Not just the words they use and don't use, but the feelings that lie beneath the words.
What about you?
It's just me.
You want to tell me what's got you so upset?
It's just that it's all the time. Jeannie and her friends teasing me. We were in the locker room after gym, and she goes, "Oh, look at Madonna." I thought Jeannie was my friend.
So you were embarrassed?
Yeah. Why do I have to be the one that's different?
You feel you're different? Different from all of your friends?
Well, not all of them. This girl, Kelly, she's the same age as I am, and she's as big as I am on top, you know?
Well, do they tease Kelly?
No, she's proud of the way she looks.
And you're not.
Well, I guess I'm not ashamed, but it bothers me when they tease me.
You'd feel better if they didn't tease you.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think's going to make them stop teasing you?
Maybe if Jeannie knew how much it bothered me, maybe I should, talk to her.
Sounds like a good idea.
Another valuable technique we can use to improve communication and minimize conflict with our adolescents is the I message.
I messages should be used primarily when you have a problem with your adolescent that he or she doesn't see as a problem. When you find yourself in such a situation, state the problem as you see it, explain why you see it as a problem, and then state the consequence that the problem causes for you.
Jeffrey, come over here, please.
Yeah, Mom? What's up?
Jeff, when I see your things all over the floor, I feel very frustrated. I work hard to keep this house clean.
The tone of Mom's voice indicated that she was angry, but her words made it clear that she was angry with her son's behavior, not with who he was as a person. This is one reason why an I message is a much better communication tool than a you message, which we looked at earlier. Here's an easy-to-use formula for I messages. Begin with when, then name the behavior you're talking about, then the feeling that you're experiencing, and then state the consequence that the behavior causes. The example we just saw would look like this. When I see your things all over the floor, I feel very frustrated. That's because I work very hard to keep this house clean. iMessages are an excellent tool to use to improve communication between you and your adolescent, or anyone else for that matter. The important thing to remember about them is that they focus on what you are feeling, and they don't place the blame on someone else.
Hosting this series has been a special experience for me. I've enjoyed appearing in all the programs. When I first read the script for this one, I was prompted to take another look at our family album, and one thing that struck me was that the adolescent years are in many ways similar to our children's early years. They can be turbulent, or terrific, or both. They're both times of rapid and dramatic change that pass too quickly. When they're small, we wonder how such a tiny package can hold so much promise. But from the very first, we seem to glimpse the future. From the first time they stand on their own and take their first steps, to the first time they run and fly away. From rocking in our arms, to rocking with the band, from swinging in the park, to swinging after dark, from tractor rides to power glides. Too soon our children put their childish ways aside. I'm Michael Learned for Aid Association for Lutherans.